So being hated on the internet is very easy nowadays, and you can be hated for a variety of reasons. Having different political beliefs, different opinions, a different identity, being cringe. For some reason recently, if your location is based anywhere in close proximity to India on Twitter, being way too negative, being way too positive.
I'm f***ing the dog. I'm f***ing the dog.
Not standing by your beliefs and being a so-called grifter.
Never touch the stuff. That was a lie.
Being bald, having too much money, not having enough money, saying Viva Pinata wasn't the pinnacle in gaming and that person definitely deserves it, and some just hate for the love of the game. So it's safe to say it's very easy to be hated on the internet nowadays, sometimes simply just for existing, but when it comes to having a presence or influence on an online platform, it's even easier to be hated, primarily because you are putting yourself essentially on a pedestal to be judged by everyone else on the same platform, and even if you haven't done anything remotely wrong, some people will justify hating you just from the way you look to simply the tone of your voice. But today we're going to be talking about someone that recently has been treated like a toilet brush in a bookie's bathroom. I'd recommend the brisket sandwich, by the way. But I am talking about the YouTuber, streamer and business owner Ludwig. Now the hate levels are nowhere near people like Pirate Software or recently Mizkif. Those two are really hard to beat at this point. Pokimane, okay, maybe on the same levels as Pokimane, but at this point I think sometimes she's doing things just to make people mad for shits and giggles. And not to brag, but my prediction was right 8 months ago in that previous video. No need to thank me at all, but as said recently, Ludwig has been receiving a lot of flack online, and today I wanted to look into why that is and the situations that have led to all the shit being flung at him, and gauge whether in these situations he does deserve the criticism he faces. But as always, first we need to know who Ludwig is.
My name is Market.
Hi, could I order 2 large pizzas with a side of pussy?
Sorry, what?
Pussy.
So before Ludwig was a popular YouTuber, streamer, and apparently an entrepreneur when it came to selling bidets, and someone that in the present day is described as charismatic, innovative, and always pushing the boundaries of content, with a haircut that has not changed for about a decade, although very impressive hairline. What is that, a 1 on the Norwood scale at the age of 30? Very good genetics. But over a decade ago, he was none of this. No, that doesn't mean he got a hair transplant. No, before Ludwig was the charismatic streamer we all know as today, his initial start on the internet was a far cry from what he would later be. Because his start on the internet from what was public was in 2011, when he was around the age of 16, making Call of Duty commentary videos under the name The Zany Sidekick, which was just him talking about random topics or the gameplay in general.
What I want to talk about today is trash talking and how to deal with trash talkers.
The name of the channel probably stemming from how he called his viewers heroes and claiming he was essentially the sidekick because his viewers do all the work by supporting him.
That you guys are heroes, you know. All the viewers make up this community and make it what it is. All the commentators, you may think they're amazing. I'm not going to name any because there's so many. But they're nothing without you guys. They're just sidekicks and you're the heroes, you know?
Farming those parasocial viewers early were we, Ludwig. But a lot of the content on this channel has been unlisted and only 3 videos are present to this day. But Ludwig at this time hadn't gone through his tournament arc and his 2 veteran tours of subathons, which was essentially his viewers treating him like a monkey in a cage for months on end. Yeah, he wasn't that person yet, but this was a start. But in his next online venture following soon after, you definitely could see a glimpse of the Ludwig yet to come, and that venture was with Vine. Now Vine, for all you semen cells, was the Homo habilis before TikTok, and was the first significant checkpoint for short form content that would later inspire many other platforms that may or may not be shortening the attention span of humanity as a whole. And it's also where a lot of influencers you may know today got their start. Originally, content on Vine had a max length of 6 seconds, meaning you had to essentially cram the entire plot or point of your video into a short time frame, and it had to actually make sense or have the desired effect. Some people were very talented when it came to this, and a lot of classics came from this platform. Like, look at all those chickens, the girl with sunglasses, the old woman dancing to guacamole, and who could forget Yeet? Vine would reach its peak in 2013, where in the same year an 18-year-old Ludwig, who was now a senior in high school, would start uploading to the platform, harnessing his inner theatre kid. And also apparently his inner band kid with whatever the fuck this is.
How to have an orgasm in less than 6 seconds.
Now from this content more than his Call of Duty commentary days, you can sort of see that entertaining personality coming through, even if it is just a little glimmer. But in the same year of 2013, he would graduate high school and from there attend Arizona State University. He would continue to make vines whilst in college, but that would eventually end, not because the platform would eventually close down and many of the top creators would carry their followings to different platforms, but because Ludwig was unfortunately not one of the top creators, quite often only getting 100 views and a handful of likes at times, so he would give up. Truly the Christopher Waltz of his time, an undiscovered gem if you will. But yes, sometime after starting college, he would stop making vines. But obviously, he wasn't done with the internet just yet. Because alongside the zany sidekick in 2011, he had made another channel. A channel we would all be familiar with today, a channel called Ludwig. But from what we can see, he would only start uploading to that channel in 2015. With his first uploads being an interest of his, which was Super Smash Bros. Melee tournaments, later having an interest in both playing in them and commentating for them, and from there over the years he would slowly make a name for himself in the Super Smash tournament scene. But before any of that, he would take a slight detour in 2016, where once again Ludwig would bring that inner theatre kid back out, by joining a newly established stand-up improv group called Tempe Late Night, or as it's known today, Tempe Underground, and would perform on stage and in sketches.
Sex is like potatoes, I'm in the middle of the famine.
Personally speculating this may have had a hand at either influencing or at least amplifying characteristics like his confidence, which we would later see from him down the road. But after almost 2 years of service, Ludwig would stop taking part, seemingly due to graduating in 2017, with a degree in English literature and journalism. But what didn't stop after graduation was his love for Smash, travelling around the country to take part in various tournaments. At this time he was both honing his Smash and commentary skills whilst also expanding his network, getting to know popular players and being somewhat known within the community. But Ludwig would eventually have to start working. He couldn't just attend weekly tournaments as that wouldn't pay for things like food and rent, and most definitely not the student loans he probably had to pay back.
How do we finesse this guy to get jobs at NBC?
Yeah, we're both writers. We need jobs.
Guys,
he works
chat,
with
please
elementary.
tell us how to finesse
Someone
this guy
write a
to
good
get a
idea.
job. What do we do?
Ludwig would apply to around 300 jobs and not hear back from most of them, but one did reply, and that was in LA. You know, the city that looks like a Dark Souls boss room with how much smog is present. So he packed up his life into a rented car and moved from Arizona to California. His new job title was the editor for the Wine and Spirits magazine, and upon starting that job his life would change from there. Ludwig would go on to impress the managers with his marketing skills and how much traffic he was diverting to the magazine, and was quickly promoted through the company. He was eventually just under the VP of said company, while simultaneously founding other companies and revolutionizing them. I'm completely with you, by the way. He got fired after 6 weeks because, in his own words, he incorrectly identified a major funder of the magazine in a photo caption and they wanted his head. And thus started Ludwig's very own training montage of unemployment. He worked at Best Buy, moved on to Snapchat where he apparently got fired for taking free Baby Bell cheese from the break room that nobody was apparently eating, and he started taking some home with him, which in my opinion is fair play. He was probably barely getting by at this point and that was just free food, and supposedly it was for staff but nobody was touching it, so I don't see the problem with him taking it. And apparently he was fired for that and apparently watching movies at work, but in later interviews he would change that and say he was fired because they were spending money haphazardly. And for some reason on one episode of a podcast under Zero Pressure goes on to talk about having a wank in the office toilets.
I'm in the bathroom, Snapchat headquarters pojoing, and a janitor walks in. While I'm doing this,
No.
I don't know it's a janitor at the time, but I stopped jerking off.
Right.
And I didn't lock the door because nobody's in there, so I hobble and I lock and I go back down. And I'm like, I'll just wait.
And he worked for a vaping company as a marketing lead and had a great idea involving phase banks, but the company didn't like it because their product had so many flaws and they were not ready for a market of that size. So he would also eventually be fired from that job, but before he was fired, he was studying streamers and content creators because he saw an opportunity for marketing in that area, and because he had also taken up streaming himself in his spare time, inspired by his friend Slime, who he met through Smash, and he would occasionally co-host his podcast on Twitch, and obviously he had previous experience commentating over the streamed Smash events. In 2018, he would stream no matter how many viewers he had, and even if nobody was watching, he would act like there was 10,000 people present even if nobody was typing in chat. Eventually, he would build up a following, some coming from the Smash Melee community, but with his blunt rotation of jobs, sometimes he couldn't stream that often. In 2019, at the vape company, he would come do his 8 hours whilst also studying streamers, and then he would go home and stream for about 4 hours and then rinse and repeat each day. He had built his following to the point where he was making around $2,500 a month from streaming, but that was not enough because once again, LA is not just known for its smog, it's also known for how expensive it is just to exist there. So Ludwig still needed a job he would lose in February of 2019. You see, Ludwig thought if he had just 10,000 in his savings, he could go full time and give streaming a shot. And he already had a sizable audience. If he kept going with this momentum, he could get even bigger. But around when he was fired, he only had 7,000 in his savings, not 10,000. Meaning he had not made the goal to give streaming a good shot. So he took a gamble, where he would start his stream and tell a little fib saying he had left his job to do streaming full time.
I have left my job, and I will now be streaming full time on twitch.tv/Ludwig Ogren.
And that gamble definitely paid off. After starting streaming in May of 2018 and deciding to do it full time only a year later, he would become one of Twitch's fastest growing creators. In the beginning going from a handful of average viewers to a year later going to over 3,000 average viewers. And not only were his streams exploding, his YouTube channel was also seeing a lot of attention. And it's easy to say either down to natural talent or skills he had picked up from stand-up or the Melee community. Each stream he brought enough energy and charisma to keep people entertained, and people genuinely liked to watch him. And now that he was able to focus on content creation full time, he was able to enjoy the fruits of his labour and grow even more. And in the years to come, he wouldn't stop growing. He was a part of events, he networked with popular streamers, he met his now girlfriend through streaming, he broke the Twitch subscriber record with his first uncapped subathon in 2021, where the more people supported the stream, the longer he streamed, eating, sleeping and showering on stream. And in the same year, he received an offer of 20 million or more to move to YouTube streaming full time instead of Twitch. And he would accept said deal, apparently due to him not feeling valued by Twitch. But he also continued to innovate. Not only in his spare time would he do his homework, studying what to stream, what was popular at the time, and what his next move would be. He would host game shows with fellow streamers, including a chess boxing event, his own Super Smash Melee event. He did his second subathon, trapped in a glass box for 50 hours. He co-founded a company called Off-Brand, which was an agency that helped with creating events for creators. And Off-Brand Games, which created games, a company called Swipe which offered cheaper bidets. He made multiple successful YouTube channels, and even became a co-owner of an esports team with Moist Critical. So not only could Ludwig entertain people, he could also successfully branch out into completely different businesses. A lot of his success stems from that one gamble, and from that decision continuously innovating and studying the landscape so he could continue to entertain. And the success is definitely deserved. Once again, he went from averaging a handful of viewers to tens of thousands just 2 years later. In the current day, Ludwig has returned to Twitch but streams simultaneously on YouTube. He's been a lot more open from talking about his revenue to briefly talking about retirement multiple times. His streaming hours have decreased compared to his peak, but he's still pretty active when it comes to streaming, YouTube, his projects, and connecting with his community. It doesn't seem like he's done with his online adventure just yet, an adventure he started over a decade ago. So after hearing all of that, why has Ludwig recently been seeing an increase in hate?
That is dangerous. That's not good.
good. That's not good. That's dangerous.
Let's up those numbers!
That's not good. So for at least the last 2 years, as said, Ludwig has been receiving an increase in hate. With names such as Jellywig or the more creative, he would be the type of person in a zombie apocalypse to hide his bite, which is quite a creative way to criticize someone. That's hats off to you. But this increase in hate recently, from what I've seen, is down to essentially at one point being a terrible influence and or a terrible friend and not initially taking accountability for his involvement in that situation, and the claim he has no spine, hence the name Jellywig, and the claim he is just a people pleaser going for the safest takes possible to overall minimize the amount of criticism he would receive, but at the same time would receive the benefits of having a take on a situation. And if that doesn't pan out for him, he will, for better words, flop to the other side or take a more neutral stance. That's basically what the majority of people against Ludwig are claiming, and the criticism against him just this year alone has probably quadrupled. If you got in on the Ludwig hating stock early, you would have probably been reaping profits right now. Probably greater than any CSGO trader these past few months. But the criticism and hate is primarily down to a few situations that have happened this year, and a few that started some years ago, and going through said situations before I get to the main points where most of the criticism came from, I need to first go through the side quests, if you will, and it's not in chronological order, so fuck you, nerd. Midway through 2024, he got criticised for hosting a speedrunning charity event, but he received criticism because apparently there wasn't enough diversity. There was no women and it was just mainly dudes and some people that weren't actually speedrunners. I mean, possible controversial take here, but it's a charity event, not something like a competitive scene. The attention shouldn't really be on the players, but instead on the charity, not the individual people present. And he responds to it by saying he just invited friends and content creators he knew for the event. I don't think it was as deep as he purposely didn't invite women or actual speedrunners, and yeah, if he did, I guess people would feel more included and it would give more attention to lesser known speedrunners. But once again, the primary target was to raise money for charity. Another is with the Atrioc situation, where one of his friends Atrioc alt-tabbed on stream and you could see a paid access website that was known to have NSFW AI deepfakes of streamers, and apparently on said website QT Cinderella was present, which is Ludwig's girlfriend, and many other female streamers, and some he was in contact with. People called him out for it. QT, who was also friends with Atrioc, responded, obviously very upset about the situation, even if the tab didn't have content of her on it. He went on stream with his significant other addressing the situation and apologising for it. He would claim in said apology he didn't know who was on the website, he was just clicking out of morbid curiosity, and after this he would take somewhat of a break from content creation, and when he returned he revealed he had been investing and getting in contact with lawyers and companies to assist in getting the websites and this type of content taken down. And over the course of 2 years since it's happened, he has tried to redeem himself, and his reputation has somewhat recovered, obviously not fully. It's not easy to come back from that if you ever can. But Ludwig mainly got flack for associating with him again, later bringing him back into his content, and apparently forgiving him, with the common critique being why would he forgive someone that was looking at deepfakes of his girlfriend. But to specify, there was no evidence that he looked at pictures of QT, just that he was on the same website that did have them. But QT later supposedly forgave him, and going forward he is still putting effort into removing said content off the internet. Realistically, it was mainly QT's, Ludwig's and the other streamers affected's decision to forgive him, and a lot of them have moved on from the situation. But some still hold the opinion Ludwig was fine with him specifically looking at stuff to do with his girlfriend, which wasn't proven with evidence. There was the Mizkif situation, not that Mizkif situation. We are talking about the Mizkif alleged SA cover-up story of 2022, which Ludwig covered on his Mogul Mail channel in a video titled Twitch is Collapsing, which he would later take down. To quickly summarise, there was a discussion regarding gambling on Twitch, after a situation with a streamer lying about struggling to other streamers asking for money and using said money for gambling, and there was a discussion with streamers on Twitter about gambling on platforms, and Mizkif was supposedly mentioned, then chimes in, and an argument ensues. Then the streamer Trainwreck throws out the accusations of him covering up the sexual assault of another streamer by one of his friends, by saying that Mizkif apparently sent people to the victim's house to talk to them, forum, and that was where the allegations of him covering up SA came from. But despite sexual assault allegations being thrown out that Mizkif's friend did something to another streamer, more people focused on Mizkif's alleged involvement with it, and this obviously would affect his career significantly going forward, later saying it was the one accusation and event that ruined both his career and life. Ludwig did a video about the situation basically going against Mizkif, and in Mizkif's own words, Ludwig defamed him.
It's just wild he said this, because it's like, he basically was just like, yeah, I just defamed the fuck is. Yeah, I just pretty much fucked his life up pretty hard here with a 98% like ratio. I don't know why that part was mentioned, the 98% like ratio.
Years later, a case against Mizkif from the victim regarding things like slander and defamation was dismissed, and Mizkif took this as this was him being proven innocent for the claims made against him. Ludwig was one of the main creators cited and blamed for some of the damage to Mizkif's career, of which later Ludwig would apologise and say this was one of the reasons he stopped doing drama videos on Mogul Mail, because sometimes he didn't do enough research and the whole situation was debunked, and he did try to repair his relationship with Mizkif.
All right. And I made a video about it that was like incredibly damaging. It was just not at all based in fact. These videos have no research to them. These videos are aggregates of what is available to see online. I met with Miz in Texas. I apologized to him to, like, you know, repair the fuck up that I made. But the reality is, like, you know, it's Pandora's box to an extent. I think I did the best that I could by apologizing, correcting, making a video on the same platform, you know.
Video that he made, and we all know it's true, is the video is not a correction video. The title of the video should have been I lied, and the video could have been about my entire thing. Instead, the video was smudged in between Rich Campbell getting accused of rape and Jay Schlatt leaving the org.
But Ludwig wouldn't receive hate for long after admitting he was wrong with that video, since, you know, the whole Emeru situation was like a week later. But on to one of the main controversies. One of the bigger hits to Ludwig's reputation was with the Mango situation, where he was hosting an event called Mario Kart that was streamed live, where they would play Mario Kart whilst drinking alcohol. And he invited his friend Mango, who is a legend in the Super Smash Bros. Melee community, and apparently was a known heavy drinker. And then what proceeds to happen at the event is Mango gets progressively drunk, and Ludwig is basically cheering him on, and he gets more and more plastered. Even at one point they get a breathalyzer out and rejoice at the fact he hit a new personal best on it, with the great catchphrase, "Let's up those numbers."
Just to be clear, that is dangerous. That's not good. That's not good. That's dangerous.
Let's up those numbers!
Mango then continues to get more and more drunk with nobody stopping him, and then gets caught on camera basically doing weird stuff like humping things around female streamers.
See, we're not drunk, guys. Yeah, we're not drunk. But Mango, on the other hand, no. He's humping toes. No.
They did apparently cut his alcohol an hour before the event ended, but the damage was already done. And after the event, Mango rightfully faced a lot of backlash, losing a lot of sponsors and being dropped from organizations like Cloud9. And Ludwig would also respond sometime later saying Mango will no longer be invited to his events going forward.
You know, I reached out to anyone who I felt might have felt uncomfortable and talked to them. But also, and I already told Mango this, I'm no longer inviting Mango to Mogul Moo's event. Because, like, you know, it's a privilege to go to an event.
And he does take some accountability for his actions, specifically celebrating the breathalyzer results.
Main goal at any event is that the people who are participating have a good time. Like, that is like number one, the most important factor which determines a good event. People who show up have a good time. That's what I care about. And I dropped the ball yesterday. I mean, to be real, I dropped the ball. And that's like ultimately my fault, right? That's on me. That's my event. That's my job to do that. So I also personally apologize. I look back, it's very cringy now, but I was like applauding like him getting new PBs with his blood alcohol, which is like, you know, super poor taste, especially on hindsight. Obviously, that wasn't the intention. The intention is like similar to when we did the Doug challenge with alcohol, where we're getting new PBs on the breathalyzers. It definitely looks way different on hindsight.
But then later on says he feels no guilt for what happened with Mango.
I feel zero guilt. I don't feel guilty at all. I think this is his own actions because he's his own man. He's an adult man. And me banning him like is the only thing that I did in response because I think it was the correct thing to do. I'm not gonna lie, I am surprised though. I am surprised he got dropped from C9.
But people would start to criticize Ludwig for one, enabling him and encouraging him to continue drinking, and that he didn't do anything in the moment regarding him doing weird stuff to other people. And two, he got criticized for, after all of this, supposedly turning his back on his friend and apparently kicking him to the curb, with the claim he wasn't taking full accountability for his own actions, which I assume is from the guilt comment, and there was the claim he was blaming a lot of this on Mango, with people thinking he had some involvement with encouraging him to drink more. And three, he was criticized for apparently knowing beforehand Mango had a problem with alcohol and still invited him to said event. With the last point, he does address that, saying he had invited him to similar events twice before and there was no problem.
Abuse problems participate. Again, Mango's participated in 2 other Beer Card events. This ain't the first one. Like, we've done it, like, I have something to go off. So I think what you're saying is true, but like, I've done it twice with no problem. So there's no reason I should think there'd be a problem the third time. And I personally, like, am not like speculating. You know, I've asked Mango in the past if he has if he's alcoholic, like straight up. And he always says no. Now, like, I think ultimately you just gotta, I've been taking him at his word. That's his own
But then people would point to the moment where he describes him as like an alcoholic in the moment.
I've been practicing drinking beer for a week.
Okay, Mango is like an alcoholic. Mango can drink 30 beers and act the same he does off no beers. He's a machine of a man.
He said he had 7 beers already today.
Another criticism was regarding Mango's blood alcohol level, which was getting dangerously close to points where some thought he might die, but it is clarified at the event that the breathalyzers possibly were not accurate since he was consuming alcohol, then using the breathalyzer straight away.
The breathalyzers are not accurate. If you just had a bunch of alcohol, it spikes it way up.
Ultimately, with this situation, a lot of the blame falls on Mango. He is a grown adult that apparently had a pattern of behavior like this before, but Ludwig wasn't helping the situation, and straight after the event, Mango expressed remorse and later said he's getting help for his problem. Ludwig would later respond to the people covering the drama and criticizing him, saying they don't really care and that he understands it makes money, which, yep, you could point to the fact Ludwig had a whole channel doing the same thing.
And I actually genuinely have no ill will towards any drama channel who makes videos. Like, I think it is a hustle. It is a career that they have made. They speak on any drama for 20 minutes and they move on. I think the actual care about the things they talk about factor is very small, but like, that's fine. You know, it's like, it's a hustle. But I understand drama pays the bills quite well.
And he goes on to say he is still friends with Mango, and Mango didn't want him to talk on the drama as he was going to take it on the chin.
And I have some thoughts and opinions that I thought about speaking, but he asked of me to not speak on it. And I think that's a fair request. He said, I want to take it on the chin. He's spending time with his kid.
He then goes on to say if people hate him, he can't really change that. And regarding accountability, he's said his piece on that.
I felt I had. I think a lot of people want me to take accountability. I think I said my piece on it. And I think if people don't fuck with me, that's totally chill. And if anyone in here don't fuck with me, I think that's totally chill. I actually don't mind that.
At this point, Ludwig was still being criticized with claims he didn't take full accountability for his involvement. Some thought he wasn't taking it seriously and was mainly blaming Mango with claims of throwing him under the bus, and that Ludwig is a snake, mainly using the clip of him saying he's not inviting him anymore and that he feels no guilt. But Ludwig would talk about the situation again, clarifying his comments, his regrets, and apologizing again.
Ultimately, had very embarrassing clips in moments, and on hindsight, it looks really bad. And I apologize for it, and I've apologized for it. Bummed at how he's handling the current situation. I don't actually really understand how I can handle it better. I honestly think the biggest mistake I made is I said, if someone asked me if I feel guilty, and I said no. And I think that was my biggest mistake, was saying that. And I do regret saying that. And I was thinking, do I feel guilty about banning? But I feel guilty about the situation happening. I think that was honestly like my biggest fuck up.
And that was basically it. Was Ludwig a good friend when the situation was happening? Probably not. Did he enable Mango to keep drinking? Yes, you could say that. Did he deal with the overall situation well? No. Was his initial response that great? No, and he was criticized for it, but his last response was received quite well. But people still criticised Ludwig for inviting Mango to the event in general, claiming he knew beforehand he was struggling with alcohol. But apart from that, people moved on, but it is still occasionally used against him. And it would basically set the stage for the next situation because the hate for him was very prominent around this time. So some would say Ludwig doesn't really have any controversial takes. Normally he shares the opinions most people have. Some would say he has mostly safe takes. But then came the name that follows him round to this day, Jellywig. The name apparently referring to Ludwig having no spine due to what I just mentioned, and when he receives significant criticism for a take, he will apparently change his stance or apologise. And looking at it, the origins of this go back to the start of 2024, where Ludwig was doing his usual mogul mail videos before he apparently hated doing them. And Hassan, who I don't think needs an introduction at this point, I think even those that do not subscribe to politics know who Hassan is, but Ludwig would make a video discussing a clip that went viral that was taken out of context, of Hassan saying something along the lines of streaming is harder than a 9 to 5 or more mentally draining, which the majority of the internet disagrees with, but once again the clip was taken out of context and he continues to say there are certain 9 to 5 jobs less socially draining than streaming.
A real job can be gruesome. A real job can make you very tired, but a real job doesn't suck the soul out of you. You know what I mean? In the same way that 9 hours of streaming absolutely will. There are obviously real jobs out there that are good comparisons. Service sector, people-pleasing jobs would be very similar. Those are
good comparisons for a job that might drain your social battery. For context,
like, I think customer service type shit. But like if you're an accountant, or if you're even like in sales, my interactions with clients was limited, way more limited than like constantly having to do this for 9 hours with like a back and forth interaction for 9 hours. That's what like sucks your social battery, and you just tap out after it.
Ludwig would talk about this on Mogul Mail and even have Hassan in the thumbnail. Ludwig would make a little joke towards Hassan saying no, streaming is not harder than your 9 to 5.
Myself for almost 6 years now on how hard it really is. I'm kidding.
That was the joke. But Hassan gets 4 minutes into the video, sees the joke, thinks Ludwig is being critical of him and farming him for content, and gets annoyed.
It's like no different than what Muda did. He showed the context though. It doesn't fucking matter that he showed the context. It's just a way to just literally farm off the fucking drama. Whatever. Fuck it. Who gives a shit?
Then a bunch of people go to Ludwig's livestream and tell him to apologise or call Hassan. Ludwig for some reason freaks out a little, I think because at the time they were friends or because there was a lot of people spamming his chat. And then he proceeds to change the thumbnail of the YouTube video to take Hassan out of it, making the thumbnail less attractive, and then eventually deletes the whole video.
Call Hassan and apologize? Why is Hassan mad? What did I do? Because my mogul mail? I feel like everything I said was fine. Am I crazy? Farmed for views? Oh, well, I mean, that's the deal. I'll just pull him out of the thumbnail, and then I feel like it doesn't really matter much, right? I can just pull him out. I feel like that's... Because I feel like outside the thumbnail, you can't really make that argument much.
He creates a re-upload of that video, basically saying he deleted the previous video because it was sponsored and the video wasn't getting good views, probably because he changed the thumbnail to something akin to a stock photo. And in the new video, he adds more context to the Hassan clip, but apart from that, I don't think he needed to take the video down. It was a little joke, not even like a 10-minute roast session. But obviously on the re-upload, he got a lot of shit. People basically called him a pussy and said he cares way too much about what Hassan thinks. Thus the spineless accusations were made, which then evolved into Jellywig. And it would follow him for a while, even to this day with a different situation, Collargate. Now Collargate is basically the accusation that Hassan shocked his dog on stream, and there's probably no doubt you have seen some of the memes that came from it.
W.
Now there are two sides to this, the M14 gang and the Olympia gang if you will. There was the group saying his dog was shocked by a shock collar, and then there was the other side saying it was not a shock collar, it was a vibrate collar. I personally loved the memes that came from this.
Shock my dog, I can't stop. Yeah, shock.
But still to this day, the argument is still ongoing regarding if it is a shock collar or not. You've had people saying he's covering the prongs, and they've found the specific model which is a shock collar, and Hassan didn't help himself showing weird angles of the collar with tape on it, which apparently was to cover his address or phone number. You had XQC, or the debunker, being the primary investigator for this case. I don't know what fucking timeline we are in where that happened, but it did. And obviously you had every other streamer and YouTuber giving their take on it. And it got to the point where the meme evolved to things like Ludwig has a shock collar on because of what happened previously with Hassan. But Ludwig would actually comment on the situation saying it was a shock collar, and the people critical of Ludwig claimed he figuratively took his own shock collar off.
Do I think Hassan shocked his dog? I have no clue. I think he lied about having a shock collar. I think he 100% had a shock collar based off what's on my For You page. Maybe I'm getting psyoped. He's adamant that he hasn't shocked her, but that 100% is a shock collar, as a fact.
And he even went on to address the claims from over a year ago that Hassan controls him and that he isn't even friends with Hassan anymore.
And I think when you come in and you say, oh no, you're gonna get the Hassan call now, I think like you are like genuinely pathetic. Like you are still pretending to live in a universe where it is like brave to speak out against Hassan, as if that is not like the popular side to be on. It truly, I think, is pathetic. Again, 18 months ago, I had dealt with people who now thought that, hey, Hassan messaged me, he made the boss call, I had to take down the video. That's not what happened. You can believe me or not believe me, I really don't care, but I swear on my mother's life, who I love more dearly than any human on this earth, that Hassan has never asked me to take down a video, and I did not do that because he asked me to. I'm also not even friends with Hassan. Legitimately, I'm not. He's not someone that I invite to like my birthday or things like that. He's someone I've done streams with, and I think they were fun. He's a streamer friend. When I retire, I will never speak to 95% of the streamers I collab with again. Hassan is part of that group. That's a fact.
And a lot of people against Ludwig seem to somewhat flip a lot on the shock collar side, and for a short amount of time, he wasn't Jellywig anymore. But he did get a lot of hate from the opposite side, who were saying it's a vibrating collar, and people would tie this criticism to his following stream, where he basically goes back on his take and says it's a vibrating collar and he was wrong because he saw pictures off stream, which I don't think he clarifies which pictures he saw that changed his mind.
After my stream, I got close-up pictures of the shock collar on my mother's life. I didn't see prongs. I'm pretty sure it's a vibrate collar. So maybe I should have said 99% sure instead of 100.
And thus people went back to calling him Jellywig, but he does clarify he's still not friends with Hassan or defending him.
All this for Hassan, I do not rock with him. This is not me defending him in any way, shape, or form. I just saw some shit and I'm not trying to lie on somebody's name. I do not care outside of that. But I saw it!
He then goes on to criticize XQC, saying he had talked to him in person, and XQC says he really doesn't care about the dog, he's just fanning the flames of the drama.
XQC is probably the single biggest person who is driving the Collargate drama on Twitch, right? You know what XQC says to me at TwitchCon? He goes, I don't give a fuck if he abuses the dog. I don't give a fuck if he's a shock collar. He calls himself, when he's investigating what's happening, the debunker. He has an alter ego called the debunker. I think he finds genuine joy in flaming the drama. He's a chaotic, evil human. And seeing whatever smolders remain after he's done with his mess.
An XQC would claim he's basically lying. What he did say was if he did shock the dog, it's not the end of the world and it's not like he killed anyone. And it basically turns into he said, she said at that point. For this situation, it doesn't help that Ludwig went on stream claiming something 100% happened and he was adamant, then in his next stream goes on to say what he said wasn't true, and then adds the XQC part, which, in my opinion, it would have made more sense to include that in your first take, because at that point people would view it as you don't really have a dog in the fight. But with the way he did it, it looks like when he switched sides, he also went on the offensive to criticize one of Hassan's biggest critics, which even if it was true that he said that, it still looks bad, and he ended up getting flack from both sides because of this. I just don't know why he would get involved in something he wasn't 100% sure on, only to go back on it. But yeah, overall, it didn't make him look the best and just added to the Jellywig accusations.
Shot my dog, I can't stop. Yeah, shot.
So now, to the most important question, does Ludwig deserve the criticism, or as I said, the shit that is flung at him constantly. Well, I think with situations like with the manga situation, he definitely deserved that criticism, but obviously I think he was partially to blame, manga was primarily to blame. With the other situations I mentioned, he claims he was wrong about Mizkif, but seriously affected his career, and he claims himself it was his own fault for not doing research, and it was also one of the reasons why he doesn't do Mogul Mail anymore. But in his own words, he does deserve the criticism because he supposedly got something wrong. With the Atrioc situation, ultimately it was up to them to forgive him and start associating with him again. With the charity event, it was a charity event, the focus should have been on that. I don't think he had to even respond to the hate he received from that. And with the Jellywigging, to be honest, most of that is him shooting himself in the foot for sometimes no reason, and he puts himself in that situation. So yeah, I think in some situations he does deserve that criticism and the shit thrown at him, but to give it to Ludwig, he is very open about being criticised. Yes, he has made some comments about people covering situations, but majority of the time he does tank that criticism, and in my opinion, sometimes it does seem like it does affect him, like where he talks about getting hate for years for that Hassan video. And yeah, this year alone it has become increasingly easy to dunk on Ludwig, and he is basically an easy target nowadays, especially compared to previous years. But compared to other people, he mostly just takes it. He doesn't lash out normally when people critique him. Yeah, he might not agree with what people say about him, he might change his stances every now and again, but I think with all the flack he gets, he usually deals with it pretty well. He's usually calm and collected when he responds. And in retrospect, his overall reputation is still intact. People still love his content, especially his YouTube. And his journey to the top of these platforms is a respectable one, and nobody can take that away from him. But yeah, that's why some people hate Ludwig. Yeah. Schlatt stopped uploading, Pepe said. But yeah, that's all I had to say, and bye-bye.